Look around at nature. From a tiny algae to a sunflower to the stars in the Milky Way, we can see intricate patterns that are breathtaking in their beauty. Even more astonishing is how these amazingly complex systems work together to support a function like life. In man-made things, we see systems that are engineered with a specific purpose in mind. But can this be true in nature as well? Are there systems that allow birds to fly, or whales to swim, or flowers to bloom, also the result of intentional design? And what about the human body? In all its beauty, performance, and complexity, the human body is compelling evidence that God made us in His own image to serve His purpose. As Christians, we believe the Bible plainly says that God specifically created us. It's pretty hard to look at the diverse, unique world around us without sensing there must be a master designer responsible for it all. To think otherwise simply defies what we can clearly see. In fact, God promised that we could see the evidence. Romans 1:20 tells us that, "For since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made." Creation, made. Notice those words. God used the language of design and construction. This series takes us on a journey through the most complex and miraculous creations on earth. Us. Physicians, scientists, engineers, and other experts will guide us on an exploration of some of the most intricate and amazing features of the human body. We'll also meet the Millers, Mark and Dana, and their two children, Johnny and Audrey. They represent a typical American family, active in their church and community. Like most of us, they rarely stop to think just how truly extraordinary the very fact of their existence really is. As we watch the Miller family grow and learn, they'll help us illustrate the miracle of childbirth and the blessing of eyesight. They'll demonstrate how using our hands for the most simple daily tasks is far more complicated than even the greatest feats of human engineering. And we'll learn how the systems of our body make it possible for us to live and breathe and accomplish extraordinary things that only humans can do. We are God's intentional creation, and He has a purpose in mind for each of us. So, let's get started and find out how awesome our created bodies really are. How can you tell the difference between something that is designed versus something that came together naturally, like the pattern of fallen leaves or clouds in the sky? Things that are designed will show one or more of 7 patterns common to designed things. First, designed things, whatever they are, will have numerous parts working together to fulfill a specific purpose or function. The more interconnected parts there are, the more complicated it becomes. It's like a puzzle. The more pieces it has, the more complex it is. A second principle of design is a particular arrangement of the parts. For a thing to work as a whole, all the parts must be present and must be specifically arranged. The only way to get the whole picture is for all the puzzle pieces to fit together in the right arrangement. The more pieces there are, however, the more chances there are to get the arrangement wrong. In that case, the thing doesn't do what it's designed to do. Out of countless wrong possibilities, there's really only one way for this puzzle to work as intended. The human body works in a similar way. When you have all the parts properly arranged, then the system can fulfill its function, whether that's sight or touch or the ability to put this puzzle together. There are other characteristics of design that always come from the mind of an intelligent designer. Let's compare it to something that we can all relate to, a bicycle. Now, most of us learned to ride a bicycle when we were just kids, so we probably haven't really stopped to think about what a cool product of engineering it is. But the way a bicycle is designed takes advantage of physics along with the structure and energy potential of our bodies. And it all comes together with the purpose of getting us from one place to another. In addition to having purpose and a specific arrangement of parts, a bicycle will also feature these additional design requirements. Number 3, proper alignment. If the wheels aren't in alignment with the frame, your bike will wobble and your tires will rub up against the frame. Number 4 is precise timing. If the gears don't fit into the chain at just the right time, you won't get any forward movement. Characteristic number 5 is exact dimensions and shape. The frame is structured to distribute the rider's weight evenly between front and back wheels. And of course, the circular shape of the tires and the wheels is what makes it work. Number 6 is a tight fit. If you've ever had a chain on your bike loosen up or the gears slip, you'll find it requires much more energy to ride it, or you can't ride it at all. And finally, characteristic number 7 is a definite sequence for correct assembly. You can't put the wheels on before the frame is built. Without all of these design requirements, you'd probably get a bike that's poorly cobbled together and probably doesn't work at all. An easy way to think about the patterns of design is by their operation. Purpose and design are inseparable. You know, an architect wouldn't try to design a building without first knowing its purpose. Plans and specifications always are a sign of conscious design. When you see the patterns of design, you know they come from an intelligent designer. So, shouldn't we come to the same conclusion when we see these same features in living things? Let's keep these 7 principles in mind as we explore the human body. Our journey begins with an event so common, yet so profound: the birth of a baby. Human development is a perfect example of multiple parts working together for a purpose. It illustrates a principle called all or nothing unity.
In living organisms, all or nothing unity means that unless all of the critical parts are in the right place at the right time and in the right amount, none of the expected function is attained. It never implies that every part is absolutely essential. For instance, we can live without an appendix, but you certainly can't live without your brain, and you certainly can't live without your heart. So we need all of those parts together, or you do not get the function that was originally planned for that system. But with reproduction, you have to have all of the parts for mom and dad and baby in at the right place at the right time, or nothing can reproduce. And if you can't reproduce, you do not get a second generation to get it right. And you know, the Bible was pretty insightful when it mentioned way back in Genesis chapter 1 about living things whose seed was in itself.
Childbirth is so common, it's easy to overlook the fact that before a baby ever arrives in the nursery, he thrives in a total water world for 9 months, a world that is impossible for any person to live in once he has taken his very first breath.
To
accomplish that feat, only while the baby is in the womb, his body has special characteristics that make him uniquely suited to live and grow in a watery world. How does this happen? Let's flash back in time to when Mark and Dana Miller were expecting their first child, Johnny. Mrs. Miller can expect a lot of changes to her body over the next few months as their baby develops. During pregnancy, the arteries and veins of a mother and her baby must somehow connect to ensure that the baby receives all the sustenance he needs to grow. But as the baby nears birth, intricate and systematic changes to the baby's blood vessels and heart must happen so he can live and breathe. God achieved this by designing the placenta, a remarkable temporary organ that provides a magnificent interface system between two distinct biological entities that safely bridges mom to her baby.
Before we are born, we obtain all the nutrients and oxygen we need to grow and to develop from the mother's body through the placenta. But then marvelous changes happen. Moments after birth, we can only obtain air by breathing through the lungs. So how does this happen, the change from the watery world to that outside, a completely different world outside of the mother's womb? Well, to understand this and answer this question, we have to compare the circulatory system of the unborn baby to that of the mother.
Blood makes its way to nearly every part of the body via the circulatory system. Its main feature is the heart, that on a really simple level is a pump. With every beat, your heart contracts, pushing blood out and circulating it throughout your body, including your lungs, where it picks up a fresh supply of oxygen. Did you know your body has nearly 60,000 miles of blood vessels? Your heart beats about 100,000 times a day, or about 36 million times per year. Your body contains about 5 quarts of blood, which circulate through the body on average 1 time per minute. Without this process happening every minute of every day of our entire lives, we cannot live. But before a baby is born, he lives inside his mother's body in water. So what's different for the baby in the womb?
First, the baby must have a substitute lung. The placenta, which is a temporary organ that develops during pregnancy, fulfills this and many other functions. Second, the circuit to the lungs must have a bypass, a connection between the artery that supplies blood to the body, the aorta, and the artery that carries blood to the lungs, the pulmonary artery, is called the ductus arteriosus. The ductus arteriosus is that bypass around the lungs. Third, the blood vessels must not only connect the placenta to the baby, but also they have to connect inside the baby from the point of attachment to permanent vessels that lead to and from the heart. The umbilical cord is the connection between the placenta and the unborn baby. It provides a bypass around the liver so that the oxygen and nutrient-rich blood can have the most direct route to the heart and brain.
What this all means is that because an unborn baby is not ready to breathe air, only about 10% blood volume circulates through the lungs, which is just the right amount for the lungs to develop. There are also 2 other temporary routes that bypass the liver and provide a shortcut between the right and left sides of the baby's heart. The purpose of these detours is to get the main flow of oxygen-enriched blood directly and efficiently to the places where it is needed most, primarily the developing brain and heart. What's really amazing is that in the baby, unlike in the adult, the oxygen-rich blood and the oxygen-poor blood actually merge together in the same vein. It's a bit like 2 streams that flow into the same riverbed, running side by side, but without mixing a lot. Certain design features within the system function to control this blood flow in order to get the right amount of oxygen to the right places while the baby grows and develops. For about 9 months, the baby is pretty content in the underwater world of the womb, but then everything changes. When Mrs. Miller starts to go into labor, the baby's world is set to radically change. Of course, God, the master designer, planned for that. He created the temporary structures in a way that provides the baby a safe transition out of the womb and into our world.
As the time of birth draws near, the mother and child must go through great changes to prepare the baby for life on the outside to breathe air. By the end of the 7th month, special cells in the lungs are secreting a certain substance which helps to open up the lungs and keep them open when the time comes.
So when it's time for the baby to be born, how does his little body know to take his first breath?
There's these special detectors inside the umbilical cord which are especially sensitive to stresses. And they send signals to tiny little muscles surrounding the vessels, causing them to constrict and to clamp down, which limits the flow of blood from placenta to baby, causing an increase in the level of carbon dioxide. These special sensors inside a baby's body are able to detect that increase in carbon dioxide and sends a signal to baby's brain, which is then sent to baby's lungs, saying, take a breath, take a breath. And of course, after that cord is cut, then that flow of oxygen stops, that carbon dioxide level increases, sending that irresistible urge for baby to take its very first breath.
Johnny's first breath starts irreversible changes for his life in a new world. In the one critical minute after delivery, his body initiates structural changes that make him able to survive in a radically different environment.
Once the baby's lungs are inflated, the pressures necessary to pump blood through the lungs drop 90% from the levels they were in the womb. The pressure in the right side of the heart immediately drops well below the pressure in the left side. This pressure change shuts the trap door between the right and left sides of the heart. Later on, cells begin to grow over the edges of the valve, permanently closing up the temporary opening. Less than a minute after birth, the cessation of flow through the umbilical vein and arteries and the higher levels of oxygen in the blood triggering certain chemical reactions close down the umbilical vein and arteries and the bypass around the liver. The very same factor that helps cause the arteries in the lungs to open up also helps cause the bypass around the lungs to close down, and rather quickly. That is the increase in oxygen levels with the onset of breathing. The other main factor in closing down the bypass around the lungs is the lack of that molecule produced in the placenta caused by clamping of the umbilical cord. Its job is to keep the bypass open until delivery has been accomplished.
When Johnny takes his first breath, blood starts flowing along the new circuit where it picks up fresh oxygen. Within 30 minutes, all temporary bypasses, including the trap door between the right and left sides of the heart, close up. Within 1 or 2 days, the bypasses are closed for good. Johnny has successfully transitioned out of his 9-month temporary water world to his new and permanent air-filled home. The way the circulatory system of the unborn baby is able to swiftly transform itself to purposefully suit the newborn baby displays all the characteristics of an intentional and well-designed system. Numerous parts with precise dimensions and a particular arrangement working together for a specific purpose with a definite sequence and precise timing. That kind of complexity doesn't happen by accident.
Fortunately, for the vast majority of births, things proceed along normally. And within 1 or 2 days, all of those functional anatomical differences between baby and mom are essentially closed, and baby is well on its way towards living this fully functional life, growing from a child to an adult.
Of course, we want all babies to be born in perfect health. But unfortunately, this isn't always the case. Some babies are born with health problems that may stay with them for life. But regardless of the baby's health, every birth is a miracle and a blessing. As the psalmist says in Psalm 127:3 and 5, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. It is simply amazing. The very structures that are absolutely essential for a baby to live and develop inside the womb are absolutely incompatible with life outside the womb. Think about it from a design perspective. To get a heart transplanted from one person to live inside someone else is a truly incredible technological achievement. It takes a room full of sophisticated equipment and highly trained doctors. Imagine then what kind of master engineer it took to design a system in which a whole person lives inside another person for 9 months. Childbirth is so common, but so mind-blowing when you really think about it. Mothers and babies' independent systems fit together perfectly to sustain the baby as his body develops itself in the womb. And then a series of miraculous changes happen. The intertwined systems delicately unravel and the baby is born. What can be more astonishing than that? In the miracle of reproduction, God shows evidence of His presence and His plans for us. As the psalmist proclaims to God in Psalm 139, 15 through 16, "My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they all were written, the days fashioned for me."
What a remarkable technological achievement. Human engineers can only dream of coming up with something where a person could live inside another person, an entire watery world, and have everything change in one single breath. I'm just astounded by that. It allows me to fall in love with the Lord in a much deeper way. The Bible says that the Lord knows us long before we're ever born, and it also indicates that He's very interested in our development. It says in Psalm 139 that He has covered us inside our mother's womb, which means He sees what's happening. He's controlling and He's guiding in that. And now we've had a look at what actually took place while that was happening inside of mom. Then why shouldn't we respond just like David did, who said, "I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and that my soul knows very well."
That a baby in the womb can undergo such miraculous and rapid changes to live in our world is surely evidence of God's special love for us and must certainly indicate that He has a special purpose for us.